Hey everyone, my name is Zach. I'm a 24-year-old climber from Canada, currently living in Montreal. Welcome back to my training series, where I record most of my training and provide in-depth analysis of every session. So let me mention right off the bat that at the end of this episode, we're going to be doing a really big training program breakdown. So I'm about to start a really intense, 2-month block of training leading up to the first 2 World Cups of the season. And we're actually going to be doing quite a bit of brand new training that I've never done before. Some key things that are going to switch up a little bit. So if you're interested to hear about them, definitely stick around to the end of the episode where we're going to do a really in-depth breakdown. But as we go about the episode and actually do the training, I'll just give kind of the broad strokes of what we're doing and the new training that is going to be taking place going forward. So yeah, let's start with the session. The biggest thing, the most striking thing right off the bat, is that we are not climbing on a spray wall, as you can see. So for those who watched the last episode of the training series, that episode featured basically a week long of me just climbing on the spray wall at the Boardroom in Toronto. And the reason for that was because I was fresh off of hurting my shoulder, and by climbing on a spray wall, I could really cherry pick what moves I was trying and make sure that I was making up boulders that avoided hurting my right shoulder. But yeah, over the course of that week, my shoulder was getting better and better. And up to this point, I was feeling pretty confident that I could try some gym sets. And while I still have to kind of avoid a few certain moves, I definitely don't want to be doing any big wingspan sort of shoulder buster moves. And I don't want to be doing any mantles, things like this. But of course, most boulders don't really feature this kind of move. So it was actually really nice. And it turned out over the course of these sessions that I could indeed boulder around on gym sets and just avoid 1 or 2 things. But for the most part, my shoulder is pretty good to go, and I can train properly now, which is really, really nice. At the time I'm recording this, I haven't tried to do a dip yet, but actually I'm going to be trying that later today at the present time. So maybe I can even start pressing off of my shoulder soon as well, which would be pretty cool. But I'm definitely happy at all the things that I'm able to do right now. So one thing that was actually quite interesting with this session as well is that it kind of felt weird to climb on gym sets after climbing on just a spray wall for a week. So I was definitely feeling my body kind of relearn 3D climbing, you could say, a little bit over the course of this first session. I had to kind of learn how to toe hook again, and had to learn this kind of body tension in the cave here was a little bit weird to get used to. But it was definitely nice. I felt a lot more muscle patterns in my body were getting activated. And so we're climbing at Bloc 2 right now. And since we've been gone for almost 3 weeks or something, there was a whole lot of new boulders. And yeah, I think maybe over half the gym was reset, which was really nice. And something that I'm going to be really focused on with this new training program that we're starting for these next couple months is really just not losing sight of the target competition that we're training for. Target competitions. So this being the World Cups. I am I'll talk more about this in the program breakdown later, but the long story short is I'm really going to try and make the most of this season. I think it's going to be a big season for me, and I'm going to try to just not forget about that and forget where my objectives lie. And this being the competitions, sorry. So one of the points I'm getting at here is that I often get too caught up in my bouldering sessions on sending boulders and like really achieving the full send. Even if I fall, like matching the finish hold of a boulder, of course, that's like really, really unsatisfying to do this. And so I'm the kind of person that will keep repping out that boulder until I just get the finish match, whereas I've like basically got the value from that boulder, right? And typically it's not going to be worth trying to rep out the boulder just to get the finish match. Sometimes it's valuable, but for the most part, it's not. So anyway, all this is to say, I'm going to do my best to really try to not like get too caught up in sending boulders and just try to get value from boulders. Feel like I'm learning about the boulder I'm climbing and I'm taking things away from the unique moves and bettering myself as a climber. And, you know, I'm trying to get as much value from all of the training that we're going to do over the next 2 months so that I can be the best climber possible for the World Cups. So let's take this boulder, for example. I'm trying it quite a bit. I finally stick this really hard move to this red sloper and bam, can't stick the last move, which was deceptively very hard actually. The finish hold, that white hold, it was pretty good, but it was super slippery. It almost felt like no text on the inside. But anyway, older Zach as in past Zach, even just like 2 months ago, would keep trying that boulder like a lot and probably try it again like the next day. But I'm happy that I was able to kind of walk away from that boulder. I definitely got the key value from that boulder in particular, like the really hard move off of the white undercling into the red sloper was definitely quite a learning curve. And I feel like I really learned how to maneuver like that intense undercling really well. And I can take that away from that boulder and apply it to future undercling moves. Whereas there's not much to learn on that last move. And I think it's not worth me spending more time on that boulder just to get the send. So anyway, this is like an example of this idea, right? I definitely just want to take away what I can from a boulder and not get too caught up in sending it, because I'm really, really laser focused on performing at the World Cups this year. And this is the best way we can go about it, is to make the best use of our time. You know, this being said, I'm sure I won't be perfect at this though, and there will be boulders that I get too caught up in and maybe work for a little bit longer than I should, but not everyone's perfect. And as long as I do my best to prevent this from happening, I think that will still be pretty good. So anyway, we are wrapping up this first session of the program, this morning session of bouldering at Bloc, and we're finishing off with this really nicely set R4 slab. This one was super cool, and these blue volumes were very tricky to stand on, and I felt like I had to be so patient on them just to avoid like that one little tiny movement that's going to have my foot slip and cause me to fall. And I guess I also should say that it has been a little while since I've climbed on a slab. Actually, the last slab I would have climbed on at this point would have been like 2 weeks ago, which would have been during the high performance competition. So, you know, the last time I climbed a gym set slab was maybe like 3 weeks ago, like during the last comp simulation we did here, or something like that. So I definitely felt like it was weird to stand on these volumes and try and balance, because my slab skills were a little bit dormant. And so this boulder did a good job of reawakening them. And actually, we're gonna get to some more really good slabs later in this episode. And Bloc 2 has actually some really fire slabs up right now, and I'm gonna be psyched to work on them and try and level up my slab skills. But anyway, that one was cool, and we are going to actually, tacked on to the end of this session are a couple exercises. So like I said, I'll talk about all of the changes to the training program and the new sort of things we're doing at the end of the episode. But kind of a quick note to say is that every session that we do, like every single session in a double day is going to have like 2 strength exercises tacked onto it. So for example, this morning session that we just did had, pistol squats and calf raises, as well as the side splits. And then, another session might have 2 other ones. So anyway, really quick, let me just mention that later on in that day, I did a campus session, but I forgot to bring my camera, so I actually didn't end up filming it. It was kind of uneventful though, so no big deal. So we're fast forwarding to the next day where we are back at Bloc 2. And what we are watching right now, me doing this hangboard, is actually going to be one of the biggest change-ups to this training program. And at first that kind of sounds weird because, I've always been doing hangboard. That's not too new and exciting, but the interesting part is I'm actually doing this hangboard immediately before a bouldering session, which I have never done before. So, okay. I'm going to talk about this more at the end of the episode. This is the last time I'll say this. I keep repeating myself. But basically what I just did there was 2 sets of 2 reps of hangboard, and I'm going to immediately move into my 45-minute session of bouldering. So this was kind of like a little short mini hangboard session, and I'm going to, like I said, move right into my session of bouldering. So there's a couple reasons that I'm going to be trying this. One of the probably the most important reason is that I'm going to be doing this little like mini hangboard session once every training day, and it's kind of placed in different spots. And this is basically just to have me be doing hangboard more frequently. So basically I'm going to be doing like shorter hangboard sessions more often. Instead of doing my one longer hangboard session on every day 2 of training, I'm going to be doing 2 shorter ones on day 1 and day 2 of training. And they're both going to be taking place immediately before a climbing training session, whether it's like a bouldering session or a campus session on the spray wall. It'll be happening immediately prior to that. And another idea with this, like right before the session mini hangboard workout, is that I've been noticing over the past few months even that I'm not always doing a good job at really warming up my fingers and my grip strength to 100%. So by forcing myself to do 2 max crimp hangs, it means that my fingers must be fully warm while I move into the session of bouldering. And the idea with this as well is it can kind of give my grip like a bit of a power up. Because if I don't do a good enough job in my warm up, like getting my grip to 100%, I might not be able to execute as hard with my grip strength, right? So I actually was very much noticing it in this session here. I had a pretty good couple hangs that I did relative to where my finger strength is right now. And so I felt like my grip was like really ready to go. And what I did right after the hangboard workout that I did was, of course, I still had to do a bit of a climbing warm up, but it was much shorter than it normally would have been. I maybe did about 6 or 7 or 8 boulders just to get the body moving and working hard. And then I started climbing harder as well. But yeah, my grip was like feeling really, really activated, and it was extra nice. And I'm really curious to see how this training is going to work going forward. And I definitely have more to say about this as well. Like this hangboard stuff that I'm going to be doing. But like I said, stay tuned to the end of the episode and I'll talk more about it, because for now I want to talk about this boulder that we're trying. So we tried this boulder earlier in the episode, which would have been the day prior to this session that is happening right now. And I was feeling like not so hot in that first session of the episode. And in this session, I was feeling much better actually. Partly due to the little grip strength power up that I had with my hangboard. And so I definitely felt like I had a good chance to work on this boulder a bit more. So, yeah, this boulder is like pretty hard, but also like really my style, which was nice. It revolves around this really cool first move And then we move into this really body tension based sequence where I slap up to this big right-hand sloper. I have to toe in really hard on that crimp in the cave from earlier. And I was really happy with my body tension on that move actually. Typically body tension isn't my strength, but I was able to execute this move pretty consistently, which was nice. And then you can see that I'm finding some interesting beta that probably is not by design, to move off of the big sloper. And I am ending up doing this kind of 1-2 double clutch move. And I'm actually skipping like that little purple crimp above the big hold I'm holding on to right now. And I'd imagine from here we're kind of meant to go left hand to the crimp and then right hand Gaston into that middle sloper. But I think that would probably be harder than what I'm trying, where I'm kind of crossing left hand up to the sloper here. And B, I'm not sure if I want to kind of be smashing into a shouldery move like that quite yet. This beta was good for a lot of reasons. I think it was easier, and B, better on my shoulder. It's definitely like really finicky though to get the momentum right, because the holds I'm jumping to aren't super good. So yeah, it's like a really precarious move and kind of a really cool sequence actually, even though I'd imagine it's not by design. And you can see I'm inching my way closer and closer to this boulder, and I'm getting like so close, which was extra frustrating because at this point I'm now in the territory where I'm like very close to sending this boulder and I've got a lot of value from it. So I definitely should at least be walking away from this boulder on this session at any second now. And maybe there's room to revisit it in a future session and just put a couple more tries on the boulder. And I knew this at this point, going into this attempt as well. So what I said was, this is probably going to be my last attempt of the day on this boulder. And I got a little bit nervous, but what I did is I also used it as an opportunity to practice some head game, because of course this is a common scenario that we're faced with in a competition. You know, you only have one try left. Can you calm your nerves and execute? And so I used that as a little opportunity to practice this mental tactic, and I did a good job of it. Even though I knew it was my last attempt of the day, I was able to stay decently relaxed and just climb calmly and chilly, and it resulted in a pretty awesome send. I was happy with that one. Definitely had to try really hard, and that was like a really epic boulder. Super epic. And so what that meant is I was pretty tired physically after that boulder, so I had a little bit of time remaining in the session of bouldering, which I guess I'll also mention is only 45 minutes long compared to our typically hour-long bouldering sessions. And this is just to compensate for the hangboard training that we're also doing in this session. You know, I can't just tack on hangboard onto like an hour-long session of bouldering and just kind of pile on the session. If I'm going to add some grip strength elements to this session, I need to basically take a little bit away from the bouldering session. So yeah, we just have, like anytime we do a climbing session where we're also doing this hangboard right before it, I cut 15 minutes off of that session just to compensate. And this also helps balance the training load all throughout the week, which you have to keep in mind, you know? Like we only have so much energy as humans to spend throughout the week, and you just have to be very aware of what you're capable of executing in a week of training. And so this is like an example of that. And while I say this, I actually ended up going like 5 to 10 minutes or so over time of this 45-minute bouldering session. And the reason for this is because I went 5 to 10 minutes over time while I was trying this boulder here, which is a really 5-star slab actually. And the reason that it's okay that I went overtime in this session while I was trying this boulder is because this boulder is like 100% lower body based, essentially. Like I'm not actually using any grip power while I'm trying this boulder. And the logic is, adding the hangboard training, which is the grip training, on top of the session. Kind of like this boulder that I'm going overtime here doesn't pile on the grip training. It means that the hangboard isn't piling on the grip training if I'm spending time on this boulder. The point is, I'm not really tiring myself out while I'm trying this, so it's okay if I go a little bit overtime while I'm trying this slab boulder. And I didn't go too overtime anyway. 5 to 10 minutes is definitely okay. And if I'm really in the flow state and in the zone on a boulder that I'm trying, I'm always definitely down to stay in that pocket and that really good learning zone and make the most of it instead of cut myself off at 45 minutes. So anyway, you can see that I'm finally making some progress through this slab, and I get to this upper part and check out my right foot, check out the rubber that I left on that volume. My shoe just kind of started heating up and sliding down that volume, and I could feel like I had no chance. So I wasn't able to finish this one off, but I'll definitely come back and retry this one pretty soon, because this is a really good slab to work on. And I was also really happy with kind of the fast learning that I had on that kind of ninja jump move into the stem. My coordination is definitely feeling pretty rusty since we haven't been doing much slab lately. So my first couple tries on that boulder felt really garbage. And then I was able to relearn what it felt like to kind of be fast and quick on my feet, really easily. And I got back into the groove in only a few attempts. And yeah, that was good. And I'm definitely gonna look forward to trying that one again. And so, playing off of the theme that we were talking about earlier with the new hangboard training at the beginning of the session, this is also in combination with doing pinch block immediately following the session. So basically, we're going to have a bit of a grip strength sandwich on this bouldering session, you can think of it as. So we do 2 sets of our crimp hangs before the session, and then we do our 45-minute session of bouldering, and then after the bouldering session, we do 2 sets of pinch. And yeah, I'll talk more about this at the end of the episode, but for now, let's jump into our next session, which should be endurance. And actually, yeah, this will lead me into talking a little bit about this other new element of training. So it is the time of year to start training endurance. And what I like to do is start training my endurance about 2 months out from the target competitions. And I find that I'm able to build endurance quite fast and then also don't retain it for very long. So if I was to train endurance, 3 months ago or something, that wouldn't actually really help me so much during the comp season. So yeah, this is kind of the perfect time to start getting some endurance sessions in. I'll try to do about maybe 2 months, maybe more like a month to a month and a half of endurance, and then ditch it about a month, maybe 3 weeks out from the first World Cup of the year. And yeah, so I'm no stranger to training endurance. For those who have been following the training series for a while, I have definitely done a couple endurance cycles, but typically what I do is I train 4x4s for my power endurance. And I think 4x4s are nice. It trains your cardio really well and it gets you pumped. But I've decided that I want to mix it up this year and try something else very new. Like I said, this is one of the quite new themes of training that we're going to be doing in this program. So I've never done circuits, or at least longer boulders where the idea is we get pumped with one go on the wall, right? Whereas with the 4x4s, you're kind of doing a boulder, dropping, and then getting right back on and kind of looping it 4 times. Now the logic with circuits, which you would imagine is typically more of a sport climbing training tool, is that I'm gonna aim to do about 25 to 30 move circuits For today though, we're starting on just a 20 move circuit, as you can see. And I think the first couple sessions I'm gonna do our 20 moves and then slowly start to work up to 30 moves. And the logic behind the circuit training is actually I want to really improve my flash goes moving into this next competition season. Now, what I mean by that is recently I've noticed that my flash goes aren't very strong in recent competitions, even in training on the gym sets and in like mock competitions. I find that I don't feel like I have a lot of wiggle room on the wall to play around with different body positions on like physical boulders. And I find that I try to just move really quickly through the boulder, even on my first attempt. And if I don't, I'll end up getting really pumped. And climbing too fast can lead to sloppy mistakes, etc. So the idea is I want to build not only build endurance, but build confidence that I can spend a long time maneuvering my way through a longer, powerful boulder and have enough wiggle room to figure out the beta on the fly while I'm climbing. Of course, we always want to try and get a good root read of a boulder, but the more wiggle room, the better. And this is the logic with the circuit training, basically. I'm going to try and really increase my capacity to being able to do 30 pretty hard moves in a row. So that way, when I'm in a competition and I turn around and I see the power boulder, which can typically be kind of long sometimes, I don't have to try and race up it on my first try. And, I can more so think of it as just trying to figure out the moves on my first go and just have really good confidence that I can flash these kinds of boulders. So yeah, that's the logic there. And I'm interested to see how this training is going to work going forward. And yeah, we're going to be doing circuits every 3 days, so it's going to be a lot. And I am hoping to see really fast progress. But anyway, that wrapped up that day of training, and let's jump into the next one. So here we are after a rest day for our next training session. And this one is going to be just another session of bouldering. Again, we're going to do it at Rose Block 2, especially because I wanted to jump back on some of the really good slabs that they have up in the gym. And it also worked out extra perfectly because my skin was a little bit pink from those first 2 days of training. So having a session completely dedicated to only climbing on slab is a great way to heal up pink tips if you have them. So before we jumped into the 2 slabs that I wanted to prioritize, being the yellow jumpy one that we were trying earlier in the episode, as well as the purple volume slab that we hopped on briefly. I wanted to jump on this boulder just because it looked really nice, and I actually started getting spit off of it a few more times than expected. And I saw, of course, that this pinch that we had to use near the end of the boulder has the no-tech side up, but I was not ready for just how actually terrible this hold was going to be. And I guess it's because I'm used to grabbing juggy holds when they're used as no-tex holds, and maybe this is one of the first times I've actually tried to grab a sloper that's no-tex. But man, putting a sloper as a no-tex side up is really taking it to the next level. Because of course with slopers, often the way that we use the holds is to try and optimize with friction. And in this situation, there is no friction, right? And I have to awkwardly pinch this hold as hard as I can, but also still position myself underneath it. Honestly, I managed to work my way through that no-tex hold on this try, but I really don't know why. That boulder is maybe worth revisiting because I really never quite got a grasp at how to hold that no-tex hold really well, and I had to kind of just keep winging it until something worked. But anyway, now it's time to hop back on the slabs that I wanted to prioritize, and I wanted to jump on this yellow one first while I had some nice freshness. Now check this out. I am going to make really quick work of this boulder and do it really fast in the session, even though, of course, we spent a long time working this the other day. And this kind of brings me into like a reason why this happened, I find that calf fatigue and calf strength, as well as like ankle fatigue and strength, is often really overlooked when it comes to slab climbing. And what I mean by that is we all often have this idea that we can work on a slab while we're tired and kind of try it as much as we want. Maybe sometimes we end up rapid firing attempts on a slab and just kind of throwing ourselves at it because we think we're not getting tired. And we're not getting tired in our upper body and in our grip, where we normally get tired while climbing. But it's very easy to overlook just how tired your feet and your lower body actually get, and how that impacts your attempts when you're trying a slab boulder. So I was able to do that boulder right there on like my first try of the day because my ankles and my calves were very fresh. And what this does is it helps you balance better, right? All the little muscles in your ankle and your calf are firing a lot harder, and they're able to stabilize yourself while you're trying to balance on these volumes with no hands much more effectively versus the times where you're like trying the boulder a lot back to back to back, and your lower body's getting really, really fatigued, making it harder to balance and having your performance deteriorate a little bit throughout the boulder. And honestly, the reason that it's kind of hard to identify when your lower body really starts getting fatigued is because often these kind of slab boulders are very, very movement, like they're very learned movements. And there's kind of a fine line to thread between rapid firing attempts so that your body understands how to move better on the boulder and having the muscle memory really fresh in your system versus your lower body getting fatigued, right? Because it's not just a gradual decline in your attempt, like the quality of your attempts, because it's not just fatigue that we're factoring in here. It's also your muscle memory increasing and becoming smarter. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword, right? Your lower body gets more fatigued while your body learns the movements better. So anyway, the point is, I learned a lot of the movements on that yellow slab from a couple days ago, and now I combine that with the freshness of my lower body, and that resulted in ascend. So anyway, some things to think about while you're climbing on slab. And then you can see that we tried that purple boulder briefly, but that one honestly feels really, really, really beyond me. It kind of just feels impossible to stand on those volumes. And I know that it is possible though. The setters said they were making some moves on it. But there's definitely comes to a point where you just feel so far away from a boulder that it's really hard to want to work on it. It's hard to even muster the try hard required to make progress because it kind of just felt hopeless on that one. So I allowed myself to walk away from that after I realized that I don't think there's a world in which I'm ever climbing a boulder like that. So we're going to hop on this slab, which is a little bit of a change of pace from the other slabs we've been trying so far. And that's because this one doesn't have any volume smearing that we have to kind of just trust our feet not to slip. This one is really nice because we have footholds that we can really dig into, and there's a lot less variance involved. And it's much more about like, if you do the things correctly in order to move through this boulder, you're going to do it because there's less room for a foot slip or friction kind of being involved. And also, I really like boulders like this, like slab boulders with more, like footholds with more bite, because I find that I can really take advantage of all of the calf training that I do, right? We do a lot of calf raises, and I think this is a really underappreciated exercise when it comes to slab training. And yeah, if you're looking to improve your slab, definitely incorporate calf raises into your workout. Because on a boulder like this, we're constantly having to move up and down with our calves. Sometimes we need to be able to sink lower. Sometimes we need to press up. And feeling really strong and stable in our calves is going to help us balance better on these little footholds, of course, as well as allow ourselves to move through this boulder at a nice kind of slow pace so that we can feel out the positions and our ankles and our calves won't get tired. Similar to the concept of why I'm incorporating circuit training into my training again so that I can have better flash goes. Calf raises honestly work like this when it comes to slab climbing. The stronger your calves are, the more room you have to find your way through a slab before your lower body just gives out. And you can see I'm doing this one a couple times. So we first got this end of this boulder where I was able to just reach the finish hold, keeping my right foot on that lower hold, but I wanted to see if I could do the full version of it and force myself to pistol squat out the last move. And the little trick to do the pistol squat for the last move was to kind of tilt myself to the left a bit so that I was properly balanced and could just extend my left leg. And so we finish off this little slab session with this nice white one. And this one had a really nice move. This foot cross through, as you can see here. And we're actually doing the same move on the red one too, in reverse. And I'm typically pretty bad at these foot cross through moves on slab, but on both the red boulder and this white boulder, I had like a little mini breakthrough and a little bit of confidence building. I find that the success that I was finding was when I would cross my foot through with my hips square and then kind of use my toe pointed as like a target to try and find the foothold. And then once I found it, I could feel around on the foothold and then kind of extend my calf a bit more open and transition my weight over through. And if you want to just rewind a few seconds to see what I was talking about, I think that this is a nice kind of clear-cut way to approach every kind of foot cross through move in this sort of situation, rather than trying to cross your feet through with both of your feet like parallel to the wall, facing in the same direction. Anyway, I'm kind of just rambling a bit about this idea, but I think I learned a little bit more about crossing my feet through on slab while I was trying those boulders. So yeah, that was a really fun session actually. It was nice to just completely stay focused on slab and really get into the groove of just focusing on balance. Oftentimes when I'm having just a normal session of bouldering, sometimes the slab will get neglected a little bit and just thrown at the end. And I don't put as much focus and thought into it as maybe I do the rest of the session. So every now and then what I like to do, especially if there's a lot of slabs up in a gym at a time, is I'll just say, hey, this session, we're just going to purely dedicate to slab so that it has all 100% of my focus. And I find that's when a lot of learning can happen. So anyway, let's jump into the next session of the day, which is campusing, as you can see. All right, so check this move out. This is a pretty cool move I came up with on the spray wall. It's not often you can make really epic coordination moves on a spray wall like this, because they'll often need a lot of, setting and forwarding and tweakage to make a move like that somewhat forced. And so it's always cool to kind of find one naturally in the wild. And I thought that one was really nice. Maybe the full coordination move isn't super forced and you could potentially just stop on the white hold. But I think it was actually easier to do the full paddle. But I didn't try the other way. So if you climb at Bloc, definitely try that boulder. I think it was really fun. And then one other thing to point out, one important thing about this campus session is that, continuing on the theme I've been talking about earlier, this was the session of the training day that I did my hangboard immediately prior to the climbing. So right before this session, I did my 2 sets of crimp hangs, but I didn't film them. And I probably won't film every single little mini hangboard workout that I do, because it can be a bit tedious to see the same thing over and over again. So I might film it here and there and just give you the general idea of how the hangboard training is going. But yeah, it was nice. My fingers were feeling nice and activated, similar to the session earlier on in the episode. And yeah, man, I'm like really, really looking forward to just keep doing this hangboard right before my climbing training. And I'm really looking forward to some strong feeling sessions, I think. But like I said earlier, I need a bit more data before I'm like 100% on board with this new training, because maybe it's just been coincidentally feeling pretty good. Definitely don't make judgments on a new kind of training until you have enough data to go on, but I'm definitely optimistic. And yeah, it has been a little while since we've last campused, so I decided I wanted to try mostly new climbs during the session and kind of start on a nice fresh start. I find that's a good way to start a new training block, is to try not to compare yourself to the last training block too much and start a bit fresh. And then maybe a bit later on in the training block, I can try some of my older climbs and compare myself. So yeah, I think probably every single campus boulder in this session is going to be brand new. And I kind of made them up on the spot. And I think we made some pretty fun ones. This one that I'm trying right now is another one of the fun ones. A cool, very precarious little paddle between some bad slopers. And I actually thought that this move wasn't going to be too bad, because I know the red hold is pretty decent and I'm pretty confident on it. But this move proved to be way harder than I thought. So this one will probably need a little bit of working. And honestly, I think maybe this paddle is a bit contrived. I could potentially just static match on that teal sloper and then move up to the red. So I'll probably try that in the next campus session. But for now, we're moving on from that boulder. And actually, similar to the climbing training that I was talking about earlier on in the episode, I'm going to try and limit myself to a few attempts per boulder in all aspects of training. So what I mean by this is, I was talking about earlier how I don't want to get caught up too much in just trying one boulder, and I want to make sure that I can walk away from a boulder unsent and get some more variety in, and just have every session getting some nice diversity of boulders in. And so that includes the campus training as well. I think actually I end up getting on 5 different campus boulders in the session, which is a really, really nice number to hit actually. And I didn't get caught up in just trying 1 or 2. And it proved to be really awesome actually, because these last 2 boulders that I'm going to get on, this one and the next one, I think are probably 2 of my favorite boulders from the session, as well as 2 of my best sends actually. And if I got caught up in trying those previous ones, I wouldn't have got to try these in the session. So always keep that in mind with any training session you're doing, is if you try and go for a bit more variety and move on from a boulder, you might end up having some fun moments and some fun boulders that you would have otherwise missed out on. Anyway, check this out here. I'm getting a cool send of this one. This boulder is actually really, really sick, and probably one of the coolest campus boulders I've done in a while. And that one was actually not made up by me. That one was made up by Hugo Dorval, who's a very strong climber from Quebec City. And he made that one up while he was visiting. And then we finished off with this one that I quickly made up on the spot. And I wanted to kind of experiment and try and do some move with the no-tex hold on this wall, which is the black start hold that we're using here. And this was partly inspired by feeling really insecure on that no-tex pinchy hold from the morning session of bouldering on that pink boulder. So I thought I might play around a little bit more on the no-tex and see if I can learn anything. And you know what, I think I did learn something between this no-tex hold and the morning no-tex hold. When we're really like pinching these no-tex holds, I've noticed that like your wrist power is actually really important, because you can't squeeze the hold too much. You're almost like craning your wrist to stay engaged, similar to what you would do on like a wrist wrench or a rolling thunder. And I think maybe training either of those 2 exercises could be really valuable for holding onto no-tex holds, because I find that a lot of wrist strength is important. So I was kind of using this technique as well as I'm grabbing this black hold. I'm kind of like really engaging my left wrist, and I was finding that I was getting more power on this hold. And then yeah, this move is really cool, like this little 1-2 paddle. Not really your typical paddle, because we're going to holds that are facing a strange direction. And yeah, the purple pinch is also really bad too. So I thought that move actually turned out to be really sick. And yeah, really good campus session overall. I'm looking forward to more. So like I was talking about earlier with the grip strength training sandwich, immediately after this session, we do our pinch block. And I wanted to film this little pinch block session just to point out the fact that I got a new pinch block. And this is kind of a big deal, actually. It may seem like, okay, whatever, it's just a pinch block. But the one I've been using for a long time, I think is a little bit too positive and maybe wasn't training my pinches the most optimally. So this one is a little bit worse. It's also brand new, so it's like quite slippery. As you can see, the weight that I'm using is reflected in this. It's typically lower than what I do on the other pinch block. And that's because this one is not only a little bit worse, but it's slippery because it's new. So I'm going to have to adjust to it a little bit. But anyway, yeah, it's also way comfier than the other one I was using. The other one was really sharp and would cut up my thumb. So this one is nice and rounded, and it's going to make my life so much better. But yeah, anyway, I was feeling like some different muscles engaging too during that pinch block session, because I think this pinch block is harder to use and it's going to be probably really good for my training, honestly. I hope to see some gains on this thing. But anyway, let's jump into the next session that we're watching on the screen now. All right, so we're going to be jumping into a comp wall session at rows 2. And I got to say, I was really looking forward to this session because the R5 circuit in particular was looking like it's probably one of the best R5 sets, if not the best R5 set. We got some really, really cool looking boulders on the roster for this session. And then another thing to point out for this training session as well is that I did my hangboard right before it, but like I said, I'm not going to be filming it every single time just because it will be tedious. So yeah, just keep that in mind. I did my 2 sets of hangboard. I did 90 pounds for my hangs, which were pretty good. And yeah, similar to the session of bouldering from earlier in the episode where I was feeling really strong after doing this, it happened again. And this is just more data saying that this could potentially be like really awesome. And I was psyched. I just felt like I could grab anything. Like check out these 2 blue holds that I'm using right now. These little jibs are quite slopey, and typically I would need to spend like 1 or 2 tries like really getting into the groove of grabbing these holds and really trying to warm up my fingers to the maximum. But after doing my hangboard immediately prior to this session, I immediately started trying this boulder with just like the super amount of warmth and power that I needed to just try really hard. And it felt really, really good. So yeah, I think like I'm feeling like really awesome about this new hangboard training, and I can't wait to keep doing it. And then anyway, let's talk about this boulder. This one, I was like really psyched to get on. Looks so awesome. Looks like it could be a World Cup boulder. Really cool moves and really physically hard as well. You can see as well, I guess I haven't pointed out yet, that I've kind of found my own sequence for moving off of the zone hold. So this dyno, I don't think is meant to be like a dyno to the zone and then toe catching on the blue hold on the left. I think that toe hook is simply to help pull you up to the first of those 2 blue crimps. But I thought it was setting me up better to place the heel hook on the zone to move up to the crimp. And that way I could just immediately move into the next sequence. And I think the toe hook maybe keeps it like a similar difficulty of that move. This method here with the heel hook just kind of eliminates a move. So anyway, yeah, that was a really nice beta find. And then this next move is really, really cool. This hand flip, the blue jibs were just perfectly bad enough that I had to do the hand flip. And yeah, it was like a really cool technical, like techie power sequence to finish this boulder off. This one was like really fun to climb on and really, really satisfying to get a send of, especially because I made like pretty quick work of it. And typically a boulder this hard on the comp wall would take me longer to do. So I think that this new hangboard training is actually going to help me send boulders faster as well, which is really nice. And yeah, I was like fighting really hard on that attempt as well when I sent the boulder, so psyched about that one. And then we're going to be moving into another R5, as you can see, and this boulder is like very visually striking. a lot of holds going on with this one. If you can't tell, there's like a big foothold on the left of this boulder here. It's kind of like easy to miss, even though it's so big. Yeah, this finish is like quite tricky. You're meant to kind of fall into a stem move. Oh, that's right. I originally think that it's maybe a backwards, like spin around kind of move. And maybe it is, I'm not sure. But yeah, it's like a really kind of weird off balance. Like you got to commit into just stepping and landing this precise little foothold. Yeah, this one was a very creative boulder. And yeah, the beginning of this boulder as well looks like it's meant to be kind of a jump into this first hold and then carry your momentum back towards the left and do another dyno. But the feet setup and the hand was just a little bit too positive, so I was able to stop on this first hold, as you can see. Yeah, I think with like one or two little changes, the move would probably be forced where we have to do the full paddle. But as we get closer and closer to the comp season, I'm really transitioning my mind towards trying to send boulders at all costs and finding the best way for myself up a boulder. Because I think like this is like probably one of my strongest opinions in competitive bouldering, is that this skill is the most important skill. Finding your own way from the start holds to the finish hold. That is the occupation, that's like the job description of being a competitive boulderer. So since we're only a couple months away from the first World Cup of the season, this is the skill that I'm going to try and flex as much as I can. And when we're more in the off season, there's more room for me to work on, like try and force myself to do the full dyno version of that boulder, even though it's a little bit contrived because it's not forced in this situation. There's room for me to force myself to do it, so I learn the movement patterns and learn the skill. But right now at this point in the season, that's not the objective. Like I said, the objective is to send boulders however I can. And so that's why I tried immediately with like the beta break to see if it would work. And then if it didn't, I would try like the full dyno. And anyway, we're moving into the last of the 3 R5s. And this one is so cool looking. This was maybe like the coolest looking R5. Some really unique moves and some like fun holds, as well as fun and creative uses of these holds. Like I think the way that this whole finish volume with the crimp on it is like set up is really nice and really artsy and really satisfying. So while I'm going into this boulder, I'm not sure that I'm actually going to be able to try it very effectively because of my right shoulder is of course still injured and it's almost like healed, but I haven't even been able to do a dip yet. So I'm definitely being careful as I'm trying this. Like it, of course, is more of like a left arm mantle, like this middle sequence here. But when we start moving up into the upper sequence, I was slowly realizing that it's kind of important to press with my right arm underneath the purple in order to get my left foot up to zone. And I was really struggling to get my left foot up to zone without pressing on the purple with my right arm. But yeah, you can see like it's not that, it's just a little bit of a sketchy feeling position for my right shoulder. And I definitely don't want to push it. So I'm trying to find a way to see if I can get my left foot up before, like without using my right arm pressing on the purple to do so. And I couldn't really figure anything out. So I decided that I would play around a little bit more on this boulder and just use the jug as a part of the boulder so that I could try the last move. Because once I'm like fully stood up here, pressing up into this purple doesn't really bother my shoulder that much at all. It's like a very comfortable feeling position. And I was confident of this fact as well because I've been able to do military press decently okay. So this is basically just like a military press. And yeah, the last move of this boulder is quite crazy, as you can see. I'm able to reach the finish crimp with my right foot still on the wall. But what that means is I have to take this massive whipper swing out of the corner, and I'm trying to do a foot switch and then stab my left foot as a smear on the wall to maintain the swing. But the finish crimp is like okay, and you have so much swing that, yeah, I don't know if that method will work. Maybe it will. but I'll definitely revisit that one. And the comp wall at Rose Block 2 is always up for a month. So I'm hoping that, after like a week or two, maybe like these boulders will still be up and my shoulder will be healed. And I could potentially try a little bit harder and more effective beta on that boulder as well, and maybe finish it off. But for now, I think I'll step away from it for a little bit and revisit it when my shoulder is feeling a bit better. But yeah, man, some really, really awesome R5s. And I was psyched that I got to try them on a really strong feeling session, and definitely got to credit the hangboard, I think, for that as well. So anyway, before the session is over, you can see I'm jumping on this really fun looking R4 with a really cool toe hook sequence into a shouldery move. And you notice how I fell on my first attempt. That was because that right hand shoulder Gaston definitely didn't feel comfortable. And I kind of sussed it out for a split second, realized I wasn't 100% sure that I'd be okay. So I came off and decided to try this alternate beta, as you can see, because my shoulder was not feeling so good. And that wrapped up this morning session, really strong feeling. And we're going to jump into the next session, which is going to be our circuits. And I finally I really learned, and I'm aware of how I want to go about training circuits now after this session that we're jumping into. Because this is a new training exercise that I'm doing and I haven't done it before, I was definitely ready for some adaptation with the sets, the number of moves, etc. So after this session, I realized that the sweet spot for me with this circuit training is going to be, I'm always going to stick to 20 moves, and the way that I'm going to scale up the difficulty, like when we're getting better at circuits, is simply by increasing the difficulty of the moves rather than adding more moves. That was my original plan, was to, in a couple weeks, move to 25 move circuits and then potentially even go up to 30 moves. But after this session, where I get absolutely destroyed in terms of the pump, I realized that 20 moves is plenty and is just enough to get me really properly pumped by the end of the circuit. And I think also translates more to bouldering. I think I'd rather increase the difficulty of the circuit rather than add more moves. And then, with the sets, I'm going to do 4 to 5 sets, depending on how hard the circuit ends up being. And speaking of hard circuits, this circuit was definitely a large jump up in terms of difficulty from the one that we were doing earlier on in the episode. I definitely really wanted to test myself and try and make myself fall. In the first circuit of the video, I think I did fall once, but it was more of a slip. And so I wanted to see if I could really have myself have a proper fall where I just pump out. And so, you can see I get the send on my first try, and already, that was not easy feeling. I had to really fight my way up that. And that was attempt 1, where I'm at my freshest. And I think I mentioned it earlier, but I take 5 minutes of rest in between each set. So it's a decent amount of rest, but it's not that much. And this is also to kind of mimic the competition environment where we only have 5 minutes to recover between boulders. This is going to help train my body to be able to recover in 5 minutes very well so that I can do this during a competition. That's the logic that goes into my circuit training. And then check this out. I'm having a little accidental foot slip that was definitely making life hard on this circuit. And I was getting really, really pumped. And I was maybe 5 times more pumped during this circuit than the one earlier in the video. And then the way that I have realized is a really good way of making up a circuit and training on it is what I do is I make up as good of a skeleton as I can for the circuit. And then as I'm warming up, I start warming up on the spray wall. And as I'm reaching the tail end of my warm-up, what I like to do is finish the warm-up by forerunning the circuit in quarters. So I'll do the first quarter of the circuit, then the next quarter, then the third quarter, and the fourth quarter. And what this does is it just gets me fully warm and ready to try hard in the session. And it also helps me make sure the circuit is possible and I have the difficulty spot on, because you can really ruin an endurance session if you have to just pause and stop and reset the circuit. You'd rather just have something that's really well put together and you can just focus on execution. And what's also nice about this is that it also just helps like really get the difficulty right, because the circuit should be easy enough that the end of your warm-up, you should be able to climb it comfortably in quarters. If you're at the end of your warm-up and you're like just properly falling on the moves, it's definitely too hard. So I should easily be able to do every quarter, and it should be like a little bit difficult. And then, yeah, that's kind of how I get these circuits to work out perfectly. Because I gotta say, I'm really like pleased with the couple circuits that I've made up so far. Yeah, I've really nailed the difficulty, and you see that we did end up taking one fall due to just severely pumping out. So that was really good, and that's what we were going for. And then one last little note about the circuits, actually, before we jump into the program breakdown, is I'm kind of going on a one and done situation with the circuits. Because if I were to do the same circuit that I did earlier in the video, I'm going to have the muscle memory built up and I'm going to just be able to speed through it. So to get like the best training of each circuit, I have to make a new one for every session. But anyway, that's enough rambling. Let's jump into the program breakdown now. Okay, so I'm going to attempt to keep this program breakdown as brief as possible, but for those who have watched previous ones, I tend to ramble, so no promises. Anyway, let's break down the next couple months of training as we are heading into the first World Cup of the season. So this is all the program that I've written out. As you can see, it's leading up to the first World Cup in China, and it's the beginning of February. The first World Cup of China is mid-April, so we have about 2 months. Now, there's basically, with this training program, we have 3 distinct sections. So we have this first section here until we have our first rest week, which is 5 days long. Then we have another chunk of about 3 weeks, then another 5-day rest week, and then we head into like peak season territory. So long story short, it's looking very, very likely that I'm going to be attending and qualified for all the World Cups of the season. So I haven't written the training up to the next World Cup yet. I'm just going to prioritize focusing on the first major chunk, which is leading up to the first World Cup, and then I'll write the remaining training later. So we're going to focus on just leading up to the first World Cup. So breaking down the 3 distinct sections between each rest week, this first section here and this second section are very similar. So I won't go into detail about the differences between them because they're basically very, very similar. And then this third chunk is where it switches up a bit as we're like trying to really taper and peak properly for these events. So let's talk about the first training block and highlight some of the key new differences in training, some of which I've already mentioned earlier on the episode, but I will go into a little bit more depth with now. So basically, I won't explain how I go about doing my training program because I've explained this a few times now, and yeah, it can just be tedious to hear the whole thing. But basically, I got my 6-day training week, and that's all you need to know. So this week is going to be the exact same and is going to loop, looks like just 2 times before our first rest week. And then with the second phase of training, same sort of thing. The training week here is practically the same, and then we just loop it 3 times in a row. So this is going to be a very, very routine next couple months for me. Like I'm going to be locked in doing the same thing every week, in and out. And honestly, this is where we can make a lot of progress and really push ourselves to our limits and hit a nice peak for a comp season when we're just nice and locked into a routine and we don't have our schedule shaken up with comps here and there, etc. So I'm very much looking forward to this. Now, what a training week is going to look like for me during this first phase is, for the most part, the climbing training is going to be bread and butter, what we're used to. We got our bouldering session here, campus session here, boulder session here. So this stuff is very similar. And the newest addition to the climbing training is, of course, the circuits, as I was explaining earlier on. And the idea with the circuits is I've been noticing a lack of really good flash goes from my part in competitions in recent months, as well as even in training. I find that even on attempt 1, I try to rush through a boulder very quickly, and I'm scared to hang around and find a good position because I think it's going to bite me in the butt in a couple moves on the boulder because I think I will get pumped out. And so what this results in is just bad flash goes by me, kind of trying to rush and not having enough wiggle room to really read boulders while I'm climbing, find a good potty position before I make the next move, etc. So what I want to do is over the next like 6 weeks, like we're going to be doing circuit training all the way up until this rest week here. And then as we move into this last third section leading up to the comps, you see we do our last session of circuits here, and then we ditch it completely because I don't want to be tired from the endurance training as we're trying to be hitting our very, very high peak. So anyway, we're probably going to have like 1, 2, 3, 4, like a lot of, probably like between 20 and 30 maybe more like 20 sessions of circuits, which is a lot. And I feel like I'm going to be able to build a really, really high capacity and just increase my tolerance for what I can handle in terms of hard moves consecutively on a boulder problem. And we're going to be sticking to doing 20 move circuits. I feel like that's a good range where we're pushing past the limit of what a boulder in a competition is usually going to ask of us. Like typically we're not going to be encountering 20 move boulders in a comp, but it's nice to kind of train our capacity to be a little bit higher than what we encounter in a comp. And yeah, any more moves than this is kind of dipping into the root climber range. So anyway, long story short with the circuit training, I'm psyched to make a big push with my endurance this season, try something new, and really, really focused on making my flash go better. And with more endurance, I'll have more wiggle room to really milk my flash go for all it's worth and try and make it harder for me to fall due to exhaustion or pump. So the circuit training is new this year. All the other climbing training is pretty standard campus on the spray wall. We always do this, just our classic sessions of bouldering. And then of course, earlier on in the episode, I pointed out one of the biggest new changes with the training overall, and that is the hangboard taking place at the beginning of a climbing session, as well as also taking place more frequently. So basically I have been talking to a few people, one in particular, my old training buddy, Ben Agro, really strong guy, really strong fingers, and he has experimented a lot with hangboard. And this is a result of his experiments was that he found that he really liked training this method, basically doing hangboard kind of every training day before climbing. And I've explained a little bit about the benefits from this. One, it gets my fingers like as warm as they can get, which kind of supercharges them for the climbing session, because typically if I don't emphasize warming up my crimp strength and just my fingers in general, I might not be prepared to tackle every boulder I come across in a climbing session. But forcing myself to do 2 max hangs before a climbing session means that I'm going to be ready to grab any hold I can during my climbing session 100% of the time. Whereas warming up simply just on the bouldering wall creates a bit of variance in how warm we're actually going to be feeling as we enter our climbing session or something like a campus session. So getting super warm is really, really nice. And also what this means is I'm just basically exposing my fingers to crimping more frequently. Now, I could talk for a long time about this, but like I said, I'll try to keep it brief. My crimp strength has been feeling very bad in maybe like the last 6 months. My fingers don't feel healthy. I don't feel comfortable crimping, basically. I've been finding myself shy away from full crimping and even half crimping, and I'm often just 4-finger dragging or even 3-finger dragging. And this is very much not like me. I used to feel very comfortable crimping, and I'm bothered that I don't feel like this anymore. So part of the reason I want to be doing my hangboard more frequently is to basically make my fingers feel very, very comfortable crimping all the time, often. And this way, crimping will not feel very foreign to me, and I won't be scared to do it during a session. And even just with these, we've done this like 4 times now. I've done 4 hangboard sessions before a climbing focus session. I can already feel this kind of working. During these 4 sessions where I did hangboard and then a climbing training, I felt ready to just crimp and grab things really hard. Even like some kind of pinches or slippers, I could engage my fingers on them if I wanted to. Whereas maybe typically I just open hand the hold. So I feel like this is actually going to help with my overall finger health and feeling comfortable in engaging my fingers and my grip on various kinds of holds, and actually kind of help with injury prevention as well. And so now, obviously we can't just, typically I would just do hangboard on day 2, right? Every day 2 I would do hangboard. So I can't simply just add more hangboard everywhere, of course, right? So on day 2, we did, we would do about 4 sets of hangboard. So it makes sense that we just take this, put it on each day and divide it by 2, right? So now we only do 2 sets of hangboard, just more frequently. So basically the volume of hangboard that I'm going to be doing is very similar to what I have been doing. It's just a little bit less at a time, but more frequently, but the volume stays the same, right? So we basically have more mini hangboard sessions. So I guess to sum up this idea with this new hangboard training, I'm not necessarily looking at this as like this new training is going to help make my fingers get stronger, actually, especially because we're doing the same amount of hangs that we were before. This is more so, it's kind of nuanced, this idea, but it's more so to increase my finger health, my comfort levels with crimping, as well as just get me like supercharged a little bit for some of the bouldering sessions as well. So I think that, yeah, basically I'm not looking for necessarily better strength gains. I think just overall it's going to help my finger strength be better. And potentially this actually will have more strength benefits in terms of the training. I don't know yet. I haven't been doing it for long enough. But yeah, I'm really excited to try this out. And I guess I'll caveat all this, like this new kind of training method I'm doing with my crimp strength with, I wouldn't necessarily prescribe this training method to everybody. You know, lots of different hangboard training styles work, and I don't think there's one best one. I'm just psyched to try this for myself. And I know that for me, my body likes like stimulus often is kind of evident with how I train, right? I do 2 sessions a day, like all the time. And I like more short bursts of stuff. Whereas if I were to do just 1 session a day, my body's so used to doing 2, it almost needs more stimulus, but shorter, but more often. Whereas if I was to do 1 bigger training session a day, it would kind of feel weird for my body. So basically I'm taking this idea and I'm also applying it to hangboard. And so I'm getting more stimulus with my crimping. Whereas the other way I was doing it in reverse. Anyway, you kind of get the idea. I'm very, very excited about this. I think it's going to be cool. Really psyched about this. And also I've just been training hangboard the same way for a long time, and it feels good to do something new. And that's always good to do with your training as well from time to time, is just simply to mix it up. So anyway, to sum up this first training block, as well as the second training block here, the 3 biggest themes, I guess you could say, are 1, the new hangboard, really looking forward to trying this out more. 2, the circuits, I really want to increase my endurance and resistance to pump so that I can improve my flash goes. And 3, the other biggest theme is the consistency and the lack of interruptions. And we're just going for straight training for like a month and a half, right? No interruptions, super routine. This is how we really make progress. And you may have noticed at this point, I took a couple competitions off the program. So there's the comp at Bloc Shop, as well as one at Alley Up. I'm no longer going to do these because I have my eyes laser focused, set on the World Cup season. And in order to perform my best during the season, I need to really prioritize training right now and an uninterrupted flow of training. So those are the biggest 3 themes with the first couple chunks of training. Like I said, it's pretty much just looping the same sort of training, like 2 boulder sessions, 1 campus session, and 1 circuit session with our strength exercises mixed in between. So like our pistol squats, calf raises, hangs, pinches, dips, military press, all this kind of stuff. But our bread and butter is 2 boulder sessions, a campus session, and circuits. And then we have this rest week, and then we lead into our last little block as we are approaching the comps. So real quickly, I'll just mention that I'm going to do the first North American Cup of the season in South Carolina. Not only are North American Cups good to do in terms of getting like a good standing in Team Canada and maintaining my spot in like the top 3, but this one also takes place at a really good time. It's like a good amount of time before the first World Cup where it's not going to interfere with the travel or the training for this World Cup. But what it's going to do is act as a really, really good like get in the zone competition and really get my mind firing and ready to try hard and compete hard and relearn these skills so that I'm not walking into China with like these skills being kind of dormant. So definitely really think it's going to be valuable for me to do this North American Cup right before the first World Cup. And then the training basically just changes up a little bit. The volume of our workouts will kind of slowly taper off as we get closer to the North American Cup, and we'll ditch like some exercises and just start bouldering more. And then also at this point, the circuit training is all gone, as well as the campus training. So any climbing training that we do in this training block is either going to be a bouldering session or a 5 on 5 off comp simulation. So that's basically like the most important thing to keep in mind is after this rest week, leading into the season, we're going to be mainly just boulder training, as well as keeping like our hangboard freshened up and reignited like periodically. So anyway, I hope that wasn't too long and I didn't ramble too much. I'm sure I repeated myself a few times here and there, but anyway, that's like the gist of the next couple months of training, laser focused on the World Cup season, as well as some North American Cups. And yeah, we're going to have a nice uninterrupted training flow where we're really going to grind out some hard sessions and try to like really make some progress in my climbing ability and hit, peak Zach ever as we go into this season. So I'm really excited to share the journey and document it as usual. And I hope you're as psyched as I am to have hopefully my best season of competing ever. So yeah, thanks for watching and I will see you in the next one.